Hi and welcome back to the Bandit channel. I'm Hazel and this is the first official video for this new channel that I have started. If you don't know what it's about yet, don't worry. It's all very young, it's all very new, so still figuring it out. But basically it's going to be about books and writing and bringing you things that will help you with your books and your writing. So today I'm going to be doing a book review, the first of many, and it's going to be of Toonopolis Gemini by Rodden, who is a very good friend of mine. And I would just like to start this review with a really big thank you to him, because he probably doesn't realise this, but he actually did something incredibly kind a couple of years ago for me. Well, my house burnt down and I lost a lot of things. I lost a lot of my books, and that was really, for me, devastating. And one of the books I lost was his, and he found out about this and sent me another one, and this is the copy that he sent me, his brand new book. And he wrote in the front, "For Hazel, remember that no matter what life throws at you, nothing can ever break the power of your imagination." And I just wanted to thank him for that, because that little message, which I think he probably just sent as a little bit of a pick-me-up, you know, to say, come on, keep going, it really kind of hit home with me, and it helped me through a really, really bad time. So thank you, Jeremy. And that's one of the reasons why he's first up on this review panel, because well, I owe him one. So here is his book, fabulous book. I will be reviewing a lot of authors, indie authors mostly. Some of them I know, some of them I don't. I just want to start by saying, if you are a published author and you would like to have your book reviewed by me, please do get in touch. There's a link on the video for you, and you can just follow that link and fill in the form, and we'll get it sorted for you. I do already have loads of people already signed up though, so please bear in mind there's quite a long waiting list. I can't do that many of these at the moment. I'm going to do 2 a month, which I think is going to be about as much as I can handle at present time wise. So 2 a month, you can imagine that's not that many people, and I think I've got about 50 people already signed up, so I'm kind of booked up, but we'll get to you, I promise. So if you're interested, then do please fill in the form and let me know, and we'll get you on the list and put in to a suitable slot. How it will work, it's going to work in themes. So this month, because it is April, I decided that the month would be April Fools. Consequently, I'm doing comedy in writing, and in particular in fantasy writing. So I'm going to be reviewing 2 books in the comic fantasy genre, and I'm also going to be looking at 2 very, very good characters in fantasy who are, well, fools in the literal sense of the word. But more on that later. For now, back to this wonderful little book. So I just want to begin by talking about the cover. Make sure you get a look at that. I love this cover. This is a really skillfully done cover. It's been done by a professional artist, and that really does show in it. It's quirky, it's got characters on it that are instantly appealing, and it gives you a good idea straight away what the book's about. The cartoon theme, you know, it continues right throughout the book, and you get that immediate sense that this isn't a normal book, in the sense of it's not, you know, it's not just going to be about the world that we live in. It's going to be something a little bit different. So I like the fact that that's right up front on the cover, and you can see it straight away. It's one of the jobs of a cover, is to tell you what the book's about. So that's good. And the cartoon theme is continued throughout with a little illustration as the header for each chapter, which I find really cute. So just make sure you've got that in focus. Don't know how well you can see that, but each chapter has a little drawing for the header, which is really, really cute. You know, you've got the novel is set in a cartoon world, and every chapter has a cartoon image for it, which is great. If I have one criticism about the artwork, it's that there isn't a little bit more of it. As I said, it's set in a cartoon world. The whole book is about Toonopolis, a cartoonopolis, and it would have been nice to see a few more cartoons throughout. Not a lot, you know, not on every page, certainly not as much as you get in a graphic novel or anything like that. Just 2 or 3 per chapter would have really, really kind of solidified that toony feel. That would have been really good to see. The story itself, though, is really engaging from the start, and it's so much fun to read. I had no trouble with it keeping my attention. Gemini is the main character. He's a real boy sent to an unreal world, which is Toonopolis, and it's a world of cartoons and magic. It's because of the cartoon nature of it, it sort of intrinsically has a comedy element to the world. There are, you know, the sort of aspects of cartoons that you would expect. Cartoons are meant to be funny, so the whole world is essentially quite a funny world, despite the fact it has some, you know, sort of more serious and darker themes through it. It's quite funny throughout. The characters there are sort of quite an array of eclectic kind of characters in this little world, all of them based on, you know, your sort of cartoon stereotypes. So you've got your superheroes, you've got your sidekicks, you've got your you know, kind of random little people that you don't really know what on earth they're about until suddenly, you know, it all becomes clear. And I really like that about the book, the fact that it draws on the sort of stereotypical cartoon characters but really makes it something different by placing it in this world that's viewed through the perspective of a real boy rather than another cartoon character. That makes it very different, so that's very cool. Some of the tunes are helpful, some of them are decided villains and you know, really quite troublesome, and they go on a wonderful little adventure together. It's very well written. It's got a lovely fluidity to it, and it's really easy to read and very hard to put down. I really hated to see this one end, so you know, that speaks volumes for it, really, doesn't it? The fact that I wanted more. The attention to detail throughout is outstanding. It's got a wonderful way of conjuring up exactly what this world looks like, and yet the actual descriptions are understated. Jeremy's got this wonderful way of describing things without going into intrinsic details. So he doesn't spend, you know, paragraph after paragraph describing things in fine detail. He just sort of outlines things and lets you fill in the rest, which I actually really like. I hate it when people tell me, you know, exactly what a room looks like and exactly what everybody's wearing and exactly what this and that and the other. It drives me mad. You have to slog through all this description, and it just slows everything down, and it gets really annoying. And especially when you're in a book that's, you know, sort of light-hearted and comedic and fun, you really don't want that. So he's done that really, really well. There's just enough to let you fill everything in and create this sparkling, wonderful world. And you know, that's brilliant, especially because this is primarily for the young adult market and they get bored quite easily, let's be honest. So it makes the whole setting feel very real, which in itself is quite an achievement because it's set in a very unreal place, even more so than, you know, a normal, I say normal fantasy, but general fantasies are set in fantasy realms, but they are at least flesh and blood realms. They are just not this real world. They are a real world, but they're not this real world. this isn't even a real world. It's a world of cartoons, and yet it does feel very real. So that's really, really well done. And I really also enjoyed the kind of the nuances of the cartoon life and the cartoon world, which are actually explained. Like, he explains how cartoons can run off a cliff and not die, which as a kid I always found really annoying. I was like, how do they do that? How does that even work? It's explained in this, you know, it's great. So it's good that you actually get a little bit more sort of logic to work on, and yet the whole place is still completely illogical. The plot offers you a really unexpected break from the norm, and yet it's still a kind of a standard adventure plot. You know, it's a tried and tested model. It's one of the sort of the oldest models of stories is the adventure plot, but it's done really, really well, and it's full of surprises and twists and turns, so it stays interesting even though it's, you know, a familiar story in some regards. And although it's young adult literature, it's definitely appealing for all ages. There are some more complex elements introduced. For example, the relationship between the creator and the created. So the writer or the illustrator and the character. And I found that to be a really, really interesting concept. And it works very well to some extent. It's got a couple of niggly little bits in it where it gets a little bit confused. Whether that's just me not quite getting it, I don't know, but in particular with sidekicks are supposedly created for their superheroes at the same time that their superhero is created, which makes perfect sense, except that they're also supposed to be created by a different creator to their superhero. So you have two creators creating two different characters at the same time who are related to each other but not by the same person, and it kind of works, but it's just a bit like not quite sure on that. So I could have done with a little bit more sort of explanation of that, or a little bit more clarity, shall we say. It's a very interesting idea. Certainly it's just never quite fully explored. One of the other things that I had that with was the notion of TM, which in this context stands for terminally move, which again was a very interesting concept, but would have benefited, I think, from being used a little bit more consistently. There are only slight niggles, very slight niggles, but they lead to a few little tiny holes in an otherwise very well constructed mythology for the world. So a tiny bit of a letdown, but only a tiny little bit. Otherwise, Toonopolis is really a breath of fresh air in comic fantasy, I found, for me anyway, personally. I find it very rare that I find comic fantasy which I actually find funny. Comedy is very subjective. But that was a really, really nice surprise with this, that it was comedy that I actually really did find funny. It's very difficult to make something funny to a wide audience, again, because comedy is so subjective, so this does it really well. It seamlessly blends together prose and humour, which is not easy to do. I certainly would never be able to do it. And it doesn't overdo it. It's you know, it's just enough to make it consistently funny throughout, without being, you know, in your face, constantly trying to make you laugh all the time, which gets tiresome. So I just love the mind and the imagination of the author. I think he's taken key elements from our childhood and proven that they still have meaning to us as adults. I love the fact that you can, you know, older readers can read the book and have a really good dose of nostalgia for things that they were familiar with from childhood, and younger readers can read it and come at these same things for the first time and that, you know, sort of all generations really can still find them funny. There's nothing too dark in it, nothing too scary, so, you know, young children, not a problem, which is brilliant. And there's also a really healthy dose of pop culture references throughout. It's really well done. So you can instantly sort of imagine this world because you can associate it with things that you're very, very familiar with. So even though it's a fantasy realm, and even though it's a fantasy realm which, as I've said, is even more of a fantasy realm than most, it's very easy to sort of visualize the whole world. You know, it's Toonopolis is sort of very easily associated with Toontown from Roger Rabbit, so that gives you an instant kind of recognition if you're familiar with Toontown, which most people are, to be fair. The obvious issue here is, I say, most people are. Most people in Western culture, in the Western world, are familiar with these references. The slight limitation of the book is that it may not translate to all cultures, simply because a lot of it relies on an understanding of these references, and if you're not familiar with that particular reference, or if you're not familiar with the pop culture, you just won't understand what's being talked about. You won't find it funny because you won't know what it is, and that is a little bit of a limitation, but only a little bit. I mean, most books have that issue in some area, that it doesn't quite translate to all cultures. I think the main message of the book is a really good one. It's that if you can just ignore the lack of logic in fantasy, if you can just accept the fact that your fantasy books and your games and your films and your TV shows, there are elements that are just not logical, and they never will be logical, and it doesn't matter how much you try and rationalise them, the logic just doesn't exist. If you can just ignore that, if you can just say, right, stick a pin in it and leave it up there, that's fine, ignore it and enjoy it anyway, you can really kind of find a way of enjoying life in general a lot more, because that's what fantasies are. They're there to be enjoyed, you know, they're there for your enjoyment. You need to be able to kind of fully sort of immerse yourself in the world, lack of logic at all, and just let yourself have that fun, really. And you know, it's a really important thing in life to be able to just have fun, so I love that. I did feel that there was a slight missed opportunity at the end, as well, maybe not just at the end. It's hinted at that the main characters don't quite have all the information, and there's an opportunity presented where they could gain it and they don't quite manage to. They fall short. I'm not sure whether that was intentional on Jeremy's part, whether he's holding that back for future books, because there will be future books, so whether he's intentionally, you know, sort of leaving things open for future books by not telling you. But I personally dislike it, because I like to come to the end of a book and feel as if all the mysteries of that book have been solved. I like it to feel like it's concluded. That doesn't mean you can't have things left open that can be picked up again in future books. It just means that the main sort of questions of the book have been answered. And there were a couple that weren't quite, which left me a bit like, I don't like cliffhanger endings. That's a preference though. Some people love them. Some people love to get to the end of a book and think, oh, can't wait for the next one. But I'm already thinking that about this book. I already can't wait for the next one, so I don't need that. So yeah. One final point is on Gemini himself, who is the main character. He's a little confused at the beginning of the book. which is understandable. He's kind of ripped out of his own world, out of his own reality, and plunked down in a cartoon world. Anybody would find that confusing. He has also to deal with a talking aubergine, which is, you know, I think anybody would be confused in that particular situation. It's understandable. But the reader is also confused. So it's not just Gemini that doesn't know what's going on, the reader doesn't know what's going on as well, and that can be problematic. It's not here though, it's actually a really good aspect to both the character and the narrative, that you don't know what's going on any more than he does, because it helps you to kind of relate to him as a character. It helps you relate to what he's going through, and it also allows you to go on his journey with him, because as he learns new things, you learn new things. So that's really well done. He's a little bit two-dimensional, but it becomes apparent that there is a reason for that, so forgiven. And he does come to some personal revelations throughout the book. It feels a little bit forced, this, as it comes quite close to the end, and it's not really explored as much as it could have been. So if I would have one criticism, it would be that it could maybe have done with being sort of teased out a little earlier and explored a little more. But that's only a small criticism, really. Overall, I love this book. I'm giving it 4 out of 5 stars. And a stamp of highly recommended for anyone who likes comic fantasy, or even anyone that just likes normal fantasy and feels like a bit of a romp through a comic wonderland. It's fabulous. I love it. It's left wide open for more characters to enter and for more books, so I really can't wait for the next book. So seriously, Jeremy, write the next book already. Okay, so that is the end of this, my first official review. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we'll stay tuned for more. Okay, bye from me.